And again, welcome to Headlines. Frankie Darcell with you. Always good to have those who are at the table making the decisions joining us. It is good for 2025 to have the Honorable Congressman Dwight Evans representing the 3rd Congressional District on the phone. Congressman, good morning.
Good morning, Frankie.
How are you?
Excellent, Frankie. Excellent.
Very good, very good. Know that we have sent prayers. Clearly, the listeners always wanting to hear directly from you, so it is good to have you back on the show as we kick off a brand new year.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it, Frankie. Seriously.
Very good. Can we start first with your comments about the Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, and your thoughts?
Frankie, I'm glad you started with that. They ran a wonderful game, and the Eagles have demonstrated, I think, all of the players. I joined with my colleagues. We passed the resolution recognizing for the importance of the Eagles and what they have meant to the city, to the state, and to the nation. It's more than just football. Frankie, they have been fantastic, and they deserve what is that? They earned that championship.
Yeah, they did. And did so convincingly, I just want to put before the period, if I could do that.
Frankie, you could underline that statement and say,
yeah.
Look, all staff, they know we all off and understand the importance of the Eagles.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, and Congressman, I got to tell you, the vibe in the city, where we are, what it is doing for the psyche of the folks in Philadelphia, not just Philadelphia, because there are, and people are listening via the iHeartRadio app, around the country who are Eagle fans. But being here on the ground, especially in this very tumultuous time, you are in Washington, D.C. We're going to get back to some of that. It means a lot to have this feel-good moment in the city.
Frankie, I say to you very sincerely, just the moment of them winning and understanding they was expected not to win. Mm-hmm. It was those of Philadelphia knew they were going to win because they earned it. They worked. Every single player, every single coach, families, all involved. And the Eagles demonstrated their collectivism. So I want to sincerely thank the Eagle organization, the people, all of them working together. Everybody came together. And you can see, Frankie, that is what we need. We need that kind of coming together to make it. And the Eagles can demonstrate that.
Yeah. And I have to ask this as a footnote for not only yourself, the other congressional representatives out of the Commonwealth, including our Senate representatives. Do you think the president's going to extend an invitation to the Eagles to visit the White House?
Well, I think he should. I think the fact of the matter is they should be recognized in every and any way they can. Yeah. And I would hope the president would invite them.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's start here. All right, let's get into some of the nuts and bolts. It is a crazy time. I can tell you, as someone who covers politics, I personally cannot keep up with it all. I've spoke with some friends who work at networks. Every day, all day, there are 3 or 4 different executive orders, and you just can't cover it all. Individuals like Steve Bannon said it was by design. Congressional members went to the Department of Education last week and was stopped by an individual who would not even allow them in the building. How successful do you think you and your colleagues are being to manage this administration and the onslaught of executive orders and changes that are happening so rapidly?
Frankie, you need to understand this is a very unusual situation. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the presidency is controlled by the Republicans. The House is controlled by the Republicans. The Senate is controlled by the Republicans. But the fact of the matter is, we are still being relentless. People have been calling, asking, what exactly are Democrats doing about what's happening? And I say this with you. Issues such as health care, I say that to you, we understand the importance of dealing with health care. We recognize that the fact of the matter is that this president is worth repeating. One of the first things Trump did was to make prescription drugs more expensive. Mm-hmm. And we must understand that we are fighting that. And the fact that Trump and Republicans are talking about trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, we have I have a pre-existing condition myself, like millions of Pennsylvanians. So I understand how important it is as Democrats in Congress. We fight to protect your health care.
Right.
And it's important to understand that for Medicare, Medicaid, both those are extremely important. We can't take anything for granted. School funding, when we think of it, schools in Pennsylvania have received $5.2 billion in federal funding. That we need to make sure we need to do more of what schools mean and the importance of these schools. All these schools are extremely important, and for the kids, for the parents, every day. Civil rights. We must try to stop the firing independent leaders of federal agencies that enforce anti-discrimination and civil rights laws. And we must also recognize that, like things like civil rights, I think of the late John Lewis and what he meant to me personally. And with John Lewis, who with Dr. Martin Luther King and others, were very important. So I share with you from education funding to civil rights, all of those things. We must continue, not give up the fight. We must stick with it. And I share with you that is something that's very important. So I share with you that this is something that we have to continue to fight for.
And if I can, respectfully, when you say continue to fight for it, what plan do you, Democrat, Independent, some Republicans that are going to come over? Because this is affecting red states and their constituents as well. When Congress says that are agreeing with the executive office that we're going to continue to fight, what plan is in place? What power do you have? What angle, when you say you're going to fight, what tools are you using?
Well, Frankie, for example, my office has put together information on the front page of my website that you can follow the updates on social media in terms of exactly. It is important to understand that you have to know those things that are necessary to fight for. And I say that because there's all kinds of court cases, litigations that we have to people to have that insight, to know exactly how to fight, to be prepared. And it's something that we don't take lightly. So when I talk about things like healthcare, I talk about things like education funding, I talk about civil rights, all those things are extremely funding. That's why we updated through our social media, and the importance for people to understand exactly what they're being attacked with, and not to take anything for granted. Is why we put this piece together, so that people could understand exactly we're fighting on all fronts. We want people to understand that we're fighting at every front. We're not taking anything or anybody for granted.
I will say this to you because when I interviewed this gentleman, I promised him that I would pass this on because these real people realize. I know that you and your staff, or you have made your staff available to your constituents as well, but a gentleman who has 4 medications. One, he was able to negotiate from $319 per month down to $10 a month in 2024, down to $0 in 2024. In November of 2024, after the December, after the election, he called the pharmacy to be able to get his 90-day prescription. They told him they no longer offered the programs that he was able to access because they didn't exist anymore. As of January, when I interviewed this gentleman, the prescription is back up to $319, and he is disabled, receiving Medicaid. And when he called the pharmacy, there's nothing available for him. They said they offered him 2 options. One, he could either do it on installments, or 2, he would have to try and get a credit for those medications. Both he said he cannot afford, and that he was going to call the prescription, he was going to call the agency itself to see if he could get this negotiated down, because he does not have $319 per month for that one medication. I said to him, when moving forward and talking to federal officials in particular, to let them know that these are real people, which I know you know, but these are real people, one who lives in your district, and I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, that he is now looking at taking his medication every other day every 3 days, or negotiating with other people that share medication, which we all know is dangerous. This is real, Congressman, for real people.
Frankie, I'm glad you said that, because what I like to say to the person you just talked about, that as citizens, we must stay informed and engaged. And when I say that, Frankie, that is important, is that we must do everything we can in terms of fighting this administration. And the reason I mentioned Dr. King and John Lewis is that what better two people was leading that fight. And that's something I learned a great deal. And I'm saying some things that I'm saying right now, that we're fighting through court, we're fighting through for example, this office has created to know your rights. Mm-hmm. They explain to people that if ICE comes to your home to business, that if you miss, we're stressing the importance about understanding. As Democrats, we have a caucus-wide effort to push back on Trump administration abuse, which includes making clear to the House Republicans that many efforts to steal taxpayers' money from the American people. So it is important with those things that I mentioned to you that we don't take them lightly. And that's why we must stay informed, we must stay engaged, we must listen to programs such as yours, and we must be relentless. That's something we can't take for granted. Mm-hmm. And, I know this is extremely difficult. I know something that we haven't seen before. So I share with you that we must be relentless in this effort, Frankie. Mm-hmm. It is something you have to keep pushing and not give up. So when I mentioned the late John Lewis, when I talk about Dr. Martin King, they were fighters. We must be fighters, Frankie. We must not take it for granted. All right. That I'm there to lead the effort to make this fight happen. But we can do it when people work together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Final question for you. Scary times, particularly with private citizens, especially when they don't have to come before Congress or the U.S. Senate. When we talk about businessman Elon Musk and his Dove initiative that's been introduced by this administration, it is really scary. Does it scare the U.S. Congress? Does it scare you that he now has access and individuals that work for him to everyday citizens, including mine and yours, and relatives and people that we're related to? Is it scary at all to our government or people you have spoken to in Washington that this individual now has access to private information that citizens are required to give to the federal government? And now we have no idea whose hands it is in. Does that scare Washington at all?
Well, no, it doesn't scare me personally, because there's 22 states and the district attorney have joined together to contain a quarter against the illegal Trump freezing. That's important. 22 states and the district attorney. We state that, we keep that so people can know and understand that there are other people out there fighting. We were stressing the part about a similar coalition of one of the groups suing to block this Dodge access to Treasury Department payment. So I share with you that is something that we don't take lightly. Mm-hmm. That's why we're fighting the fight to make sure. And employee unions have sued over the buyout. They have sued the government in terms of when it comes down to the prevention for buyout. We also are fighting back with terms of the government appropriation, which is March the 14th, 2025. We're trying to make sure that this government continues to operate and not that the funds that people have away from them. So I share with you that this is a fight on every single front. We must analyze and fight on every, Frankie. It's something that we must be relentless on. Mm-hmm. We must not take it for granted. We must collectively, every person you can think of, we go into every neighborhood, every house, every church, every community, and bringing it to their attention about us working together. Mm-hmm. That's what we learned from the late John Lewis and what he did. He in return learned from Dr. Martin Luther King. And I'm constantly saying this too, because they were leaders. We must get into being that, Frankie. If we are to do this, we must work together.
All right, great. The Honorable Congressman Dwight Evans, representing the 3rd Congressional District here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Anything that you wanted to leave us with? I thank you so much for joining us.
Frankie, first and foremost, I want to thank you for what you're doing, but thank WDS for this effort. And I thank you for your leadership and the fact that you give this access to people. And we will say to people that we in it to win it. Very much like the same thing people raise questions about the Eagles. What did they do? They stayed with it, but they won it, right?
Yeah,
At the end of the day, nobody was saying, matter of fact, Donald Trump was for the Kansas City Chiefs. So at the end of the day, I have to tell you something. But who won it?
Right.
Who won it? We didn't think we could win it. He stayed it and won it.
All right. Great. The Honorable Congressman Dwight Evans, I thank you so much. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Victor.
Always, as we continue the conversation. Of course, moving forward, always want to keep you in touch with what's happening, not only here in the city of Philadelphia, but of course, the great relationships we have with our friends to the north in New Jersey, and of course, hello to everyone to the south in Delaware, and the great programs. And, you know, one of the things you guys know as well that I am extremely passionate about is assuring that our children not only have information, but access to programs, information, and education. Sheria McRae is joining me. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. Great to be here.
Good. First of all, you are running a school district in Trenton, and people would say, why Trenton? Because we have a robust listenership as well in Trenton, and I think what you're doing there is outstanding. First of all, tell people who you are and what you do.
Yes, so again, my name is Sheria McRae. I'm the proud CEO of Foundation Academies in Trenton, New Jersey. We are a K-12 public charter school, and I'm proud to say that our school is located in Trenton because that's where I was born and raised.
All right.
I currently live there, and so the work that we do every single day at Foundation Academy, of course, is near and dear to my heart. It's something that, you know, when I was a child growing up, Trenton was a place that I said I would never return to.
Oh, wow.
So I graduated from Howard University,
All right.
HU, you know.
All right. The real HU.
And graduated, and that was at the point where I realized there's something wrong with our educational system because I had done some work in some of the local schools in D.C. And so I wanted to bring my talents and skill sets back to the city of Trenton because when I came back, I learned the educational system was actually in the same place that it had always been. It was exactly in the same place, and I readily wanted to lend my strengths and talents to ensure that every child in the city of Trenton received a quality education, that they knew they were loved, that they were seen, that they were valued, and Trenton would be a place that they want to return to and impact their community in a positive and a great way. And so, you know, I'm a model of that and for that at Foundation Academy and in the city as a whole. And so, yeah, just proud to be doing this work every single day.
And you mentioned casually, really quickly, but that you worked within the D.C. public school system, and you were also an educator as well, and now have ascended to CEO. Talk about Foundation Academy, what you're looking for, and what you'd like it to look like this coming fall.
Yes, so we are growing. We want to ensure that we are providing a quality, excellent education to as many children in the city of Trenton as possible. And so as we are growing, we are also looking for great people who have a heart and a love for children, that are like yourself, right? Passionate about providing that high quality education and access to kids. It is a joy to watch children in a classroom classroom, interact with each other, interact with their teacher, grow up. I've had the pleasure of readily seeing kids graduate from foundation, graduate from college, have families, have children, and that's definitely a
You haven't been around that long.
Oh, yes, I have.
No, you haven't. You look good, girl.
Thank you.
So you're looking for educators. And I love it. Before we started the conversation, you referenced the students, not just the students, but you call them scholars. I love that. But you're now looking for educators.
We are definitely looking for educators.
What is the background of a person? What are the qualifications that you're looking for?
Love children. Mm-hmm. Want to make an impact. Yeah. In this community, in Trenton very specifically. But it doesn't, I know, people talk about certifications and all of those things. A lot of times those are used as barriers. And because of that, the best people who should be in front of children don't reach them.
Yeah.
And so that is not a thing.
So what should people do if they're interested in exploring opportunities with Foundation Academy?
Yes, if you're interested, follow us on all of our social media platforms and visit our website, www.foundationacademies.org.
Foundationacademies.org.
Yes.
Foundationacademies.org for people who are listening. Foundation Academy, because they're going to call me. And I was at foundationsacademy.org. I have to ask you this question before we go. Things are changing so quickly, so readily. And, as CEO or outside that, but as an educator, particularly in a community like Trenton, there's been a lot of discussion out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue about closing the Department of Education, the possibility of the free and reduced lunch programs going away, Head Start going away. It would impact communities clearly like here in Philadelphia, Wilmington, Trenton, and the like across the country. Your thought of the banning of the Department of Education or the future, what that would look like, particularly for education in urban communities?
Yes. So, at Foundation Academy, in my leadership, we just constantly make sure that we monitor all the executive orders that are recent and ones that will be coming for the potentially next 4 years, right? And as we monitor, we make the necessary adjustments and ensure that our scholars can come to school every single day in a safe environment where they are receiving still a high quality education. That is our goal. And so, regardless of the political climate, we ensure that our kids, our mission remains the same, and that our kids walk through our doors every single day knowing that our mission has not changed and that they will receive quality.
All right, great. Closing comments. What do you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I just want everyone to know, if you have a heart for children or ever thought about making an impact on this greater world, regardless of the things are crazy, nowadays, and there's so much negativity. But inside of a school, there's a lot of love and a lot of positivity. And so, come to Foundation Academy and feel that every single day.
K through 12.
K through 12.
K through 12. To let parents know. And I'd love to come by.
Yes, please.
When is this? Before the end of the school year. I'd love to come by, walk through what you guys are doing, do a round table with some students and pick their brain just about what they're thinking about and what's on their minds. And, of course, I do theater and all that kind of thing. So I love artsy students as well. So I'd love to come over there and see what you guys are doing.
See, that's education. That's high quality. That's fun. It's love. We would love to have you.
Look, I might be sending my application in. No, but I love what you're doing. But again, I love working with children, especially our sprawling adults who are getting ready to step into the real world and just what they're seeing, because the world is so different. And when we sit with them and listen, most importantly, we'll find out a bunch of stuff that we've never even thought about through their eyes.
Definitely.
So that's a wonderful thing. Great job.
Thank you.
Miss Howard University.
Yes.
I appreciate you. Sheria McRae, the CEO of Foundation Academies in Trenton. Give the website one more time.
At www.foundationacademies.
No S.
.org.
All
Foundation,
right.
no S.
Academy.org. We'll be back after this. We're 105.3 DAS. And welcome to this edition of Headlines. My name is Frankie Darcell. To everyone listening via the iHeartRadio app, We appreciate you definitely locking in, listening from wherever you are. And, of course, to those who are here in the city and the region. You know, it is always great to have District Attorney Larry Krasner on the show. D.A. Krasner, how are you, sir?
You know, I'm doing great, and it's always great to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, how about those birds?
Well, I got to tell you, I was loving birds the way I love them best, sitting on my sofa near my kitchen, near my bath. I don't buy $15 water or a $5,000 ticket, but I can get all the replays and close-ups of Josh Sweat wiping fake sweat off his helmet. It was fun.
Yeah, you know what? What a great comeback year for the Eagles. And then there's the other stuff. Listen, it just seems like there's a different vibe and people are excited and fun-loving. I wish we could relate this way to each other, kind of like music and sports teams when no matter what your ethnicity, no matter where you go to church, no matter where you live, we all become one in this city. And it just feels good.
Oh, it's so exciting. Even more exciting. Now I'm going to get political. Even more exciting to know that Donald Trump, who apparently likes the Chiefs, but he doesn't like them enough to congratulate them. Why? Because they wouldn't go visit him at the White House. Last time they won the Super Bowl, it was delightful to watch that man sit there while the Chiefs got stomped. It actually reminded me of a certain Olympics. Reminded me of Jesse Owens doing his thing at the Olympics a long time ago. It was a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, it was. All right, so let's get to a little bit of business. We're going to talk about a prosecution. Literally, it came down as well, where your office dealt with an issue relative to a officer and some incorrect information being filed with the district attorney's office. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We are speaking today about the fact that the district attorney's office recently achieved the conviction after a jury trial of a homicide detective, no longer a homicide detective, but a homicide detective for perjury. That detective's name is James Pitts. Detective Pitts was involved in the prosecution of someone we believe to be, in all likelihood, an innocent man who spent more than 10 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. And part of the way that frame-up occurred was with tactics by Pitts that are unconstitutional. They involved force, coercion, physical abuse in order to obtain a confession from someone who, again, we believe is innocent. We were able to determine his innocence by using forensics. More specifically, there was some video evidence that existed, some photographic evidence, where we were able, through the best experts in the country, to check the height of a participant in the crime, and the height of the participant does not match the defendant. He's very tall. He's 6'3". So we were able to determine innocence, and then we, at least to a high level, and then we saw confession, which, by the way, is not uncommon. About 30% of people who have been proved innocent by DNA, scientific conclusive proof they didn't do it, about 30% of them in homicide cases confessed. Much like what happened in Central Park with those 5 young men who had nothing to do with horrible things that happened to that jogger, but they all ended up confessing to it. And then later, DNA proved that she was actually attacked by one person. That person was none of those 5 young men who were to it. So anyway, but when you're beating people up to get confessions to crimes they didn't occur, the issue may come up in court. And what happened in court was Detective James Pitts lied under oath. He lied about whether he had engaged in this illegal behavior to get a confession. And that's unacceptable. The whole thing is unacceptable. Yeah. But we can't tolerate a system where law enforcement officers whose job it is to uphold the law are committing crimes on the witness stand. And they're doing so in a way that lets the guilty go free and puts the innocent in jail. So he was not only convicted, Detective Pitts was convicted through great prosecution by Mike Garmisa and Rebecca McDonald in this office, but the judge also understood how serious this was and sentenced Detective Pitts to 32 to 64 months, which is basically a little over 2.5 to 5 years in state prison for the things that he did. A good day for justice. a sad day in the sense that it reminds us of how imperfect the system was and still is, but a good day for justice for those of us who believe in even-handed accountability.
Two follow-ups to that. Number one, what do you say? What does the state, what does the city say to the defendant in this case who's been in prison for 10 years? What is a conversation with that individual like? Have you, or you talked about the attorneys in your office that handled this case, for as much as 10 years has to be devastating for an innocent person, I'd really like to know what that person is saying relative to your office now. Second part of my question, not only prosecuting cases, but finding out where there has been some wrongdoing, like in this case with James Pitts.
Well, I can tell you that, anybody who has been through that kind of experience, regardless of whether they've had other contacts with the criminal justice system, is traumatized. And part of what we did at the press conference topic was we played some of the prison calls from that defendant. Calls from prison are recorded. There's a big sign by the phone that says this is all recorded. He had conversations with his mother. He had conversations with a woman who was a direct witness to hearing what was happening to him in the interrogation room. And his outcry, his crying, the sound of blows being inflicted, all that kind of stuff. So in speaking, when you speak to someone who's really been traumatized and then ended up in jail for more than a decade for something that he did not do, my office has had a policy for a long time that even though we didn't do that, we weren't around when this conviction occurred, it was before we were in office, we believe the institution owes an apology to people. And so we do apologize on behalf of the DA's office to people like him who we believe are likely innocent for the conduct of law enforcement, even if it's, police, even if it's people in the DA's office who look the other way, as they often did. We do generally apologize to him. I can't speak for what the city solicitor does. Sometimes there are lawsuits that come after this. I stay completely out of that. I don't know if this is a lawsuit. I don't know, if he has a lawyer. I don't know if there's been a settlement. I don't know if there ever will be. But I stay completely out of that. And, I suspect that the city's not giving out apologies when they're trying to figure out their position. On a lawsuit, because it might be used against them in court, but I don't want to speak for the solicitor or the city. I assume and I believe that no one in the city should want innocent people in jail while guilty people go free.
District Attorney Larry Krasner is my guest. Last question relative to that. What was your motivation? One, you prosecute cases. When people think about prosecutors' offices or district attorneys and district attorney offices, they think about prosecuting people. What was your motivation or your focus or the why that your office under your tenure has gone back and looked at cases where people were possibly wrongfully convicted? What was why? Why was that a focus for you?
Well, there's so many good reasons. I was a defense attorney, a criminal defense attorney, and a civil rights attorney for individuals for, 30 years. I was defense lawyer, 25 years. I was a civil rights lawyer before I got here. So I think that gave me exposure to what it means to put an innocent person in jail. I spent, more than a year of my life visiting people in jails, many of them guilty, but not all of them. I think that motivates me. I think a sense of fair play, that if you are a defendant and you have defense attorneys, that they should get all of the evidence to which they are entitled, that it shouldn't be hidden. I don't think any lawyer should ever lie or get someone to lie on the stand. I think that's disgusting behavior, completely inappropriate. But also one of the biggest things that really motivates me is I work with a lot of great cops, a lot of really honest, decent cops who care about the law, they care about public safety, they care about the Constitution. They don't want to lie. They don't want to commit perjury. They don't want to commit crimes. And people like this hold them back. If you go to the window right now, put your ear up to the window and listen carefully, you're going to hear cheering all over the city. And it's not just the Eagles, it's every good cop in the city. Because every good city knows that bad cops who commit perjury, tear down the reputation of police officers. They tear down the opportunity to bring more officers in because they don't want to be like that. They endanger them because the community is no longer with them when they see conduct like this conduct of Detective Pitts. And the other ugly truth, and I've been in this business for 37 years, so I do have some knowledge, is people who lie, cheat, and steal in every business tend to get ahead. I mean, until there's a reckoning, they tend to get ahead. I mean, look at who the president is. They tend to get. It's an unfair fight. Ask the New England Patriots about playing an unfair game, or the Houston Astros about cheating on the job. It's a shortcut to getting ahead. And unfortunately, some of the people who become supervisors in the police department lie, cheat, and steal, at least until they're caught. We need to knock them down, get them out of the way. We don't need liars, cheats, and bullies in policing. We need the vast majority of them who are honest, hardworking cops to get a clean shot at becoming those supervisors, at setting. So it's very important to me that we knock down a small number of bad cops to elevate, lift up, respect, and honor a really large number of good cops.
Let me make this transition to this topic. District Attorney Larry Krasner is my guest. People are overwhelmed right now since this new administration at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and it is the confidence that everyday citizens have in law enforcement, in our judicial system, the Constitution, be it that of the Commonwealth or that of the United States of America. Right now, it seems to appear like it is totally in disarray. We know out of Washington, not asking you specifically about that, but there are some laws in the book put there by Congress, or some initiatives voted on by Congress, and it appears that this particular administration is just literally almost like a bull in a candy shop. And a lot of it is constitutional, whether or not it is constitutional or not. And people are just confused, but we're learning a lot more than we probably knew some time ago. So my question for you, if you can answer this question and you think it's a fair question, asking you, not necessarily as a district attorney, but maybe as an attorney in general, that the confidence that citizens should have right now in the climate we're in, understanding where we are, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. When people say, I have taken an oath to serve as a district attorney, a president, a congressional member, or the like, all of it falls too, because there's some lawsuits being filed in Washington. All of it falls under an oath. Do oaths matter?
Oaths matter to honest people. They sure do. And an awful lot of police officers took an oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws. I took that oath. It matters to me. You know, it just doesn't matter to Donald Trump. And it apparently didn't matter to James Pitts. You know, liars going to lie, haters going to hate, and the rest of us are going to try to do the right thing. That's just how. But I am not a pessimist. I'm actually very optimistic here. What I'm seeing with Donald Trump is he's testing the waters. He comes out, he writes on a piece of paper, I'm ending birthright citizenship. Well, that's in the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. That is the most fundamental and important law we have. And so far, the courts have said, no, you're not. The next thing he said is, we're going to raid churches. You're going to raid churches looking for, you know, hardworking but undocumented people. Well, now we're stepping on worship. We're stepping on religious faith. It remains to be seen, but I will not be surprised at all if the courts say, no, you're not. The First Amendment to the Constitution is not something that you can write away either.
Right.
And then finally, he is acting as if local law enforcement, whether it's police or DAs or whatever, have to be part of this mass deportation.
Right. That was going to be my next question. With Philadelphia being a sanctuary city, with what's happening with deportations, ICE coming into the communities, what role does your office play, or what would you share with the citizens in the event that they are even approached?
This is what I would share. Once again, Donald Trump can't rewrite the law. The 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution was interpreted by the U.S. Supreme Court, our highest court, over 150 years ago. And it said the Fed can't force local law enforcement to enforce federal law. ICE exists for a reason. It exists because there needs to be a federal law enforcement entity to enforce the law around immigration. That does not mean that the president of the United States can play king and tell Kevin Bethel or Mayor Parker or me what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. We are not an entity. It is not my job to do whatever he says. And if he don't like it, he better be prepared to lock me up, because that is what it's going to take. He does not get to come here with a pen and a roll of toilet paper and start writing down parts of the Constitution he's going to eliminate. Even the 4 knuckleheads that he has on the U.S. Supreme Court, even they are not going to be enough to get him past the 5 other people, most of whom are actually pretty good, who still believe that there is a Constitution and that there are laws. If we all stay together, and I don't mean elected officials, this is not a spectator sport. If you are unhappy at the possibility of the end of democracy, like I am, if you are unhappy at the idea of your votes being erased, if you're unhappy with a president who was endorsed 2 times by the Ku Klux Klan, and that is Donald Trump, if you're unhappy with that, then you need to stand up as community, stand up with elected officials, and we need to resist this nonsense. We are going to follow the law even when he won't. We are going to uphold the Constitution even when he won't. And in the end, this national fever will break. And when the fever breaks, everybody's going to look back, just like they did with that maniac Joe McCarthy, who pretended that it was a big communist plot to take over the world. They did with that lunatic Richard Nixon, who organized burglaries of his opponent's campaign headquarters. When the fever breaks, we're all going to look back and say, well, those are the people who stood up. Those people in the community, those are the elected officials who stood up. Yeah. And they're going to remember the ones who hid in the corner. And those ones who hid in the corner, if they're elected, will be out of a job. And those people in the community who sat in the corner and didn't do anything about it, they will be out of respect.
Let me say how much I enjoy my conversation with you on 2 fronts, and I'll be very candid. One, not once in the number of times that I've interviewed you have you ever said, Frankie, I agreed to do the interview. Don't ask me this question. Don't ask me that question. You've never done that. And in this climate, there are people that will schedule an interview and say, well, I'll do the interview, but don't ask me this. Don't ask me that. And recognize that you work for the people of the city and this community, and whatever the interests of those people are via my audience and speaking to people every day in the community. You've never done that. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be the journalist in this forum that I am. I appreciate that, and I enjoy so much your candor. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of Headlines. We're 105.3 WDAS.